For this next session, the theme will be more about souls and past lives. So the last time we spoke, we talked about more about the dynamic of source, or what many of you called God. Now today I wanted to go deeper into detail about these past lives that we all experience. And I know there's many people who are skeptical because there's no real proof actually that we can show you fact-wise that there are past lives. We know from different young children who are by the age of 3 or 4 who recount experiences in such detail that we can actually find proof through what their story is. Children that could have no idea about such information. So today we're going to go more into what are souls and how are they created and what's the purpose and their energetic composition. I'd like to begin, if you look at the top of the board, the one thing I think is really important to retain is that energy is vibrational. It's a vibrational language, and it also has sounds, a sound like music. And these vibrations, why is it vibrational, is that there's way more information vibrationally than there is in the spoken language. Because when you talk about vibrations, you don't just get information word-wise, you also get the emotions, you also get the different kinds of images that you can create into your head, and more and more. So therefore, that's why vibrations, it's more complex and it's more detailed kind of language. Now the first, the source, or I like to call the one, or God for many of you, is the first psychic gestalt. Now when I say a psychic gestalt, the word psychic simply means that it's energetic, and gestalt means a grouping. So if you think about source in itself, its own composition, it's a composition of a very complex energetic combination, which creates its character, its identity, its purpose, its intents, and so on. So everything that source creates also has a psychic gestalt, a psychic grouping. So finally, when we spoke the last time, is that source birthed his inner dynamics, his inner dreams that were created that became so vivid and so much detail. When he released that, they had their own will, their own free will to continue to create within what they want to understand, want to learn. Their own desires are then created. And that's the purpose of source, because source is always learning more and more and more through these dynamics. Don't forget, everything comes from source. So even if you are your own identity and you continue to birth your own desires and dreams, all that energy that's been used always belongs to source. So therefore, source grows through that information and expands himself as well continuously, as do the birthings of those dynamics. Now, when he birthed some of those dynamics, we call them souls. Now, souls, it's an entity and also a psychic gestalt. And that psychic gestalt has its own identity. Each soul is different. Like each child that is birthed on this planet is unique, has its own identity, its own imagination, its own desires. It's the same thing for the soul, except the soul has a different view of its surroundings, of its awareness. It has more of a multi-dimensional kind of awareness. What does that mean? Well, basically what it means is that when one projects, that means if you're thinking of the future, you can project your thoughts into a time frame. Well, imagine a soul can project in every kind of direction its awareness. It will throw its awareness in different places, in different dimensions or realities. And that's what the soul is about when I mean multidimensional. It can project its consciousness in different areas of itself and also outside of itself when it plays in these different realities. And the point of that is growth. It's always evolution. And in that growth, the soul can grow and grow and grow. Now, I never use the words like old soul or new soul or baby souls or whatever people like to use. I rather use development. It's like in a classroom. In a classroom, you have so many students and everybody will evolve at their own rhythm. They're all in the same class, but they all evolve differently. So that's what I mean by evolution and learning, their development. Now, the development varies from one soul to another, but it's not one is necessarily older or necessarily younger. It's all about development, what a soul has learned on its own and how it's grown on its own. Now, the soul, when it's birthed, and then when it starts creating its own inner dynamic, and when people say, well, what does that mean, inner dynamic? Well, basically what I'm trying to say is, imagine yourself when you're having fantasies or imagination, and you're daydreaming about different things in your life or what you would like in the future. Those dynamics, that's what I mean, those thoughts that you have of something that you want. The soul and source do the same thing, but the more the entity is developed, the more the detail, the more it can create in a physical way or not in other kinds of energetic realms. So that's what I mean by inner dynamics. So the soul has its own inner dynamic that it will also create, but what it does is that it can project these things in different realities. So I've chosen the physical reality, the one that we're in at this moment. So it will project a part of itself into a personality, which I'll come in more detail in a minute. So when it projects it into this physical reality, there's other personalities that do exist as well. But this one will play in the physical realm. Now, when it's in this physical realm, we must understand that there's more than just one. There could be different parallel ones. There's also other dimensions of this reality. So the personality is not in just one place. It can be in parallel places, that same personality. Now, I know this is going really far. It's like basically that all at once, you're looking at every possible aspect of every possible decision that you could have made differently that's going to play itself out. So imagine you were daydreaming about something specific. Let's say you're daydreaming about making a cake. Well, then you start thinking, well, I can make it blue, I can make an icing red, or I can make the icing pink. Well, all those different combinations of all those thoughts that you're having will have a life, will have an outcome. So therefore, that's what I mean as the personality. When it creates a dynamic, all those dynamics are explored, and the soul will retain that information as all those different dynamics play out. Now, a lot of us says, can that be true? If you go deep, more and more deeply into your own multidimensional self, into that section of yourself where you can project your consciousness, and again, that's practice. It doesn't happen overnight. You can start looking at those different aspects of yourself, and you can discover more about your evolution as an entity. Now, these parallel realities and dimensions are only for the purpose also for the soul to discover more about itself. But the personality is also independent and also has its own psychic gestalt, its own energetic composition, like does the soul and like has source itself. It's like if I have a child, then my child has another child, then I have a grandchild. Each one is independent. Each one has its own journey and its own desires and its own character. Well, it's the same thing. As the personality starts participating in a particular reality, it has its own evolution as well, and its own composition, and is also multidimensional. Multidimensional is for anything that exists will have that inner energy where you can project your consciousness in different areas of yourself, which we'll talk later how we do that. But every kind of free will entity has that ability. Now, this is where past lives come in. So they therefore occur when all these past lives are happening. They all occur in the now, in the present. So if I'm in this particular life, any other past lives that I may have will all be happening at once. Now, even if I see a personality, let's say in 1800s, then that personality, even though it doesn't correspond to the dates, now you can't look at dates, it corresponds all in the moment, all in the now. Time only exists for us in this physical reality. In the soul dynamic, there is no time. It's always in the now, in the present, and it creates, and it's aware of everything at once. So the soul will be aware of all these personalities happening at once, will be retaining all of their information and more, and will evolve as an entity as itself, plus all the information that's coming in. Now, each soul does this, and source therefore absorbs all that information as well. Now, all this information that is within consciousness is not private. It belongs to everyone. This information is everywhere, and it goes on the subconscious level, and everybody receives it. Now, either you're aware of it or you're not. Being aware of it is possible, but like I said, it's practice to go into that area of yourself. Now, as these past lives all happen in the now, also happen simultaneously, are all happening at once. This is what we're going to talk about now, is how does these past lives function? So when the soul starts creating personalities, like I said, and these are inner dynamics. So when you're starting to, let's say, fantasize about a certain scenario and you're creating these characters in your own mind, well, it's the same thing for the soul. So the soul will create these different characters for different purposes to learn more about itself. So when it creates these different personalities that come into these different realities all at the same time, and all in the present when the soul does it. So here I wrote these different personalities that can exist. So I put one in 2015, let's say that's mine, and I have one in 1828, another personality in 32 BC, another one in 300 AD. I've got one here in 1121 and 1520. So all these personalities are all happening at once, like I said, but they can also either be female or male. So when I am here right now in this moment as a female, and I'm experiencing different lessons about myself as a personality that my soul will retain as well, who is also exploring the same thing, but I also have free will within that journey. So even though the soul will create my personality, and we'll get later further on what is a personality in all its aspects, it's way more complicated than we think it is. So when it creates this personality and it comes in a reality such as me, I have my own free will to decide which path I want to take. I make my own decisions that happen in my life. Should I go right or should I go left? That's for me to decide. Of course, the soul will, because it's still part of you, you're basically a reflection of it, essence. It will keep giving me information on which path to go forward with, which one will be the most benefit or the happiest for me. Now, how does one get that? It's through our intuition, through our multidimensional self, which will come back later. I'll be saying more detail about that as we go along. But the personality, what I really want to emphasize is it has free will all the time. This is a big aspect for Source, that we decide our own outcome. Because when you learn something, it's always better to learn it within your own decisions. You're more interested if you get to choose what you want to do. And you're more motivated. So as these different personalities are happening, so let's say I do a regression and I see myself in 1828. Of course, for time frame wise, for me, Kim, in the physical sense of it, it helps me to understand where I am, what's the context of that past life, even though it's happening at the same time, but I will see it in the time frame of 1828 based on that scenario. In that scenario, there's all kinds of dynamics that are going on that are not the same as 2015. In this scenario, the beliefs are different. The beliefs about men and women are different. The dynamics in the world are different. Even my way of thinking will be different in 1828 as a woman than in 2015 as a woman. So that's what the soul is looking at, those different aspects of oneself in those different time frames. Now, I put physical time frames that are about the earth. Of course, there's other places that one can visit, other realities or dimensions. Not all of them are physical. Some of them are simply you're just other consciousness or another type of being. So I'm just looking at the ones that are part of the physical earth. Now, as these personalities are going on, I could look at the one in 32 BC, which is in the same kind of thing, in the sense that I'll be looking at different aspects of myself as a soul-wise in different scenarios. Now, why is regression therapy such an interesting thing is that when I look at these different time frames, I get more information about who I am. Not just who I am as a personality, but who I am as a soul-wise. All this information is shared. Whatever I learn in 2015 can be taken in 1828 if there is an awareness of it. All this information goes back into the soul, and one can always go back and retrieve that information for a purpose of learning more about yourself or which direction I want to choose in my future. All information is never hidden. It's always there like a huge library at your disposal about any subject that you wish to discuss or understand better. So like I said, it's shared information with the soul. Now, We also have teachers, okay? Obviously, the soul will give you information through your intuition because the soul knows the outcome. When it created this scenario of 2015, it creates who my parents will be, if I'm going to have siblings or not. What are the different outcomes that will happen? Will I go to school? Who will be my boyfriends or girlfriends or whatever I decide? Now, there's a path, but I can deviate and go around. I can choose different things that I want to learn within that is free will. And there's always teachers on the way. Now, when you do regression and when you get to this multidimensional self and you've acquired it better, you start talking with those teachers who give you advice, who help you understand all these multidimensional aspects of yourself. This is what I'm going to talk to you about in just a second, is how does one look into reality? What do I mean by multidimensional when you're trying to explore more information that you're realizing at this moment? This is going to be the next one. Like I was saying, so now that we're in the physical reality here on Earth in 2015, I'm taking myself as an example. So I wrote Kim in 2015. Now, when I'm looking out into reality, now don't forget, this is an energetic realm. Even though you see everything as physical, your five senses, okay, your hearing, your touch, your smell, your taste, and so on, are giving you that perception of what you're seeing in the physical realm. The birds, the chair, the trees, the house, the street, and so on. It's making that in a physical way, your perception of it. Now, it goes a bit deeper than that, and when I get back to the personality and its composition, I'll explain more how your perception is seen as a physical realm. But the five senses participate in that. So when I look out, that's what I see. That's what I smell. That's what I'll taste. That's what I'll hear. But there's way more information going on in that reality that you're not seeing, that you're not always perceptive of. Now, everybody has intuition. For some reason, we put it aside. We have a feeling. We don't always pay attention to it. Well, that feeling is what I'm talking about, that multidimensional self. And it can be opened up very widely. It doesn't have to just be a little feeling. It can be way more than that. And that multidimensional self is another communicative pathway where you'll get more information than simply your five senses. Now, when you look into reality, you go with the five senses, but this multidimensional self will see way more beyond that. And that's what is necessary to understand more about who you are, what do you want to create. Now, when you start using this and you understand how to use it, which will come back in the next sessions at the next videos I'll be making, I'll explain to you what kind of information is coming through this. But it's way more information that you can imagine. And a lot of it is felt, okay? It's not so much, it's more of a feeling that comes in. And within it, because it's vibrational, like I said in the beginning, there's way more information when it's vibrational. And when it comes into you, then you'll get images that your brain will translate, sounds, smells, anything that'll be translated, and more around you. It's like having a more informed decision. If you needed to go to court for whatever reason, you'll get your first opinion, you may get a second opinion, and even get a third opinion. The more information you're receiving, the better informed you are about making a decision. It's the same thing with this. You have your five senses that gives you the physical realm, but the multidimensional goes beyond that. And that's what we're going to discuss at the next video. Thank you for watching.